Aquarius Ishmael Johnson.
She asked me what I'm doing, I'm just vibing.
Make sure like, comment, subscribe if you're new. YouTube. It's your boy OJ and I'm back again with yet another YouTube video, man. Not just really a YouTube video, but a YouTube banger, man. On this video, we got the man who saved South African rugby. I ain't gonna waste too much of y'all time, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe if you're new. Comment your favorite fruit. And without further ado, let's watch some YouTube. I'm so excited to see what this is about. It might be about Rossi, if we're gonna be honest.
But how did they get there? Well, there was one man that puppeteered the whole thing. One man who brought superstars together.
Me?
The rugby team. One man that brought unwavering success. To
You gotta be talking about me.
This is the story of Rugby Erasmus and how he became the savior of South African rugby.
Super tough. Imagine winning the Rugby World Cup 3 years in a row, chat.
Johan Erasmus was born on the 5th of November 1972. He grew up in a town called Dispatch, which is in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, near Port Elizabeth, alongside his youngest sister, Yanni. Like most kids in South Africa back in the day, and even today, he had dreams of becoming a professional rugby player. The theme of coming from humble beginnings is very common in South Africa, especially in the South African rugby team. And taking into account the fact that Rugby grew up in apartheid South Africa also shows how difficult it may have been for a kid growing up. Rugby's rugby journey began at Hoër School Dispatch, where he loved his rugby. He would then go on to play rugby at the University of the Free State, where he would graduate in 1994. After his graduation, Rugby didn't really know where to look, so he stuck to what he knew. After being selected for the Free States rugby team for the 1994 Currie Cup. Playing as a loose forward for the team, where it was number 6, 7 or 8, he continued to develop, he continued to grow, he continued to get better, and was finally selected for the Free States debut in the Super Rugby season in 1997. He was selected for the Springboks squad in 1997 to play the British and Irish Lions in South Africa. Rugby would make his debut for the Springboks in a 35-16 win over the Lions in the third test. The series was already wrapped up, however,
debut win.
He got his debut in a dominant win was something special. He would go on to score his first try for the Springboks in his second game and didn't look back, as he was then selected for the Tri-Nations squad in 1997, where the Springboks claimed their first Tri-Nations title ever, winning 4 games.
Ooh, okay, Rossi. Entering in history from a young age. I see you, bruh.
The Lions
First ever?
And captained the team in 1999 and 2000. It must be noted that Rugby did make the Springbok squad for the 1999 World Cup. However, Australia were victors in the semi-finals against South Africa, and they weren't able to defend their crown in the Rugby World Cup.
Back when Australia was actually good. Can't even hate on them for that.
As well as missing out on the 2001 Tri-Nation squad, Rugby returned to the Free State for a brief stint before signing with the Stormers in Cape Town in 2003. He would play for the Stormers in their Super 12 season in 2003 and then call it quits for rugby as a player. Rugby Erasmus earned 36 Springbok caps, scoring 7 tries in a 10-year career. He also had the honour of winning a bronze medal in the 1999 World Cup. However, this was just the tip of the iceberg for the man from Dispatch, as his coaching career would be something remarkable. Rugby Erasmus began coaching in 2004 as the head coach of the Free State
That's when I was born. What the freak?
former team, leading them to the 2004 Vodacom Cup semi-finals. However, next year would be oh so special, as he would lead them to Currie Cup glory in 2005. Their first Currie Cup trophy since 1976.
Damn.
Over the next few years, Rugby would garner attention for his unique coaching style and was approached by South African Rugby to become a technical advisor for the Springboks. He joined them in 2007, however, after a brief stint, would return to the Stormers as their head coach in 2008. However, another surprise would come in 2009, as the Stormers completely revamped their structure. Rugby therefore became the senior professional coach, and future Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee was appointed as the Stormers head coach. Western Province and Stormers group started becoming a powerhouse moving into 2011. And
You
Rassie
could
was
buy him
announced
by
as
now.
part of the 2011 Springboks
2-0.
management team for the Rugby World Cup. He was announced as a technical specialist. However, after losing to Australia in the quarterfinals, Rassie was meant to return to the Western Province. However, he would controversially quit, looking for better options. After a few small coaching jobs here and there in South Africa, Rassie would make the decision to spend the 2016 and 2017 season as director of rugby for Munster in Ireland. However, he became head coach of the team after the death of former head coach Anthony Foley. In 2 years as head coach of the team, Rassie made it to the semi-finals and finals consecutively. However, he would never be able to capture the Pro 12 championship. After this loss in the final, Rassie decided to return to South Africa as director of rugby in 2017.
Director of rugby,
Though
though.
that Rassie does still hold this director of rugby title to this day.
Director of rugby is so
It's fair to say that
crazy.
in 2017, South African rugby was struggling. Springboks hadn't won a World Cup in 10 years and were being overshadowed by the dominant New Zealand rugby team. Between 2015 and 2017, the All Blacks lost a total of 2 games, winning every single other game. In the same amount of time, the Springboks had a 17 and 17 record.
Damn.
17 wins and 17 losses. They had a young up-and-coming squad. However,
Look at the people on our squad right here. Eben. See Khaleesi. I put it on
there
today.
was nothing there to gel them, to bring them together, to make them a South African team. They are known by a catchphrase, stronger together. And at this point,
Malcolm
in
Hart right there.
2017, needless to say, they were not strong at all. In February 2018,
I don't like how he
Rassie
messing with us
was
like
named as the
we
head
was just
coach of the
terrible
Springboks.
before Rassie came. Like
Former familiar
we were
face,
still a team,
Sear,
right?
The man who took his job in the past was sacked.
Damn.
In his first match against Wales, 13 players got their first cap for the Springboks. This was unprecedented, as 13 players who had never played for the Springboks before were about to make their full debuts. Amongst those 13 players were some familiar faces you may have heard of before. These included Makazole Mapimpi,
Mhm.
Maka Smith,
Mhm.
and Oxen Chair.
Yep.
3 players that would be crucial to South Africa's success
Very.
in the coming years. Although these players were making their debuts and would turn out to be superstars, South Africa would lose Rassie's first game in charge. However, Rassie would bounce back and a week later would get his first win as head coach of the Springboks. In that same year of 2018 in the Rugby Championship, South Africa would finish second, just behind New Zealand. However, many South Africans considered
I'm not going to door. We knock on that door, New Zealand. Come on, 2018.
2009. Interesting to note that Rassie has publicly stated that he would have resigned if South Africa had lost that game against New Zealand, as that would have been their 3rd loss in a row, and he considered himself not worthy to take them to World Cup glory. This 2018 Rugby Championship would also be the birth of a rising star, a man who many consider as the greatest rugby player of all time.
He's on that path, bro. Chesney's definitely on that path.
After an up and down 2018 and 2019,
Chesney's my favorite player of all time,
Rassie would
personally.
announce that after the 2019 Rugby World Cup, he would step down as head coach of the South African national team. He would state that he would just remain in his role as director of rugby. Coming into the 2019 Rugby World Cup, there was little hope for South Africa to become victors. They sat in 4th place on the World Rugby rankings, and although they had a triumphant win against New Zealand into the 2018 Rugby Championships, not much was expected of the Springboks in this tournament. The Springboks, led by their newly appointed captain Siya Kolisi, would lose to the favourites New Zealand in the pool stage. However, would make it to the knockout stage.
Tired of losing against the All Blacks, man.
26-3 in the quarterfinals.
Get to the part where we start winning everything.
16 right at the depths in the semi-finals, and booking their ticket to the final of the 2019 Rugby World Cup against England.
Yeah.
Now, historically, there has always been bad blood between England and pretty much everyone, but
Fact.
specifically England and South Africa. There is a sort of vibe you get when the 2 teams play that you just know the teams don't like each other.
RD Snyman let he finna tweak
A lot
out.
of the England players at the time did their best to rile up their opponents. For some historical context, South Africa had previously won the Rugby World Cup twice, in 1995 and 2007. And in both those Rugby World Cup finals, they had not scored a single try. They'd won the whole game on penalty kicks. And this
How does that
was
work?
the same thing in 2019, where the game started off.
Not one try, but we. Hey, a win is a win, though.
However, one man would decide to step up to the plate. The man who had outshone every single other player at the 2019 Rugby World Cup. That man was Makazole Mapimpi.
Come on, BP. Show us what you got.
Mapimpi would go on to tally 6 tries for the tournament. The third
Shit.
highest tally in the history of the Rugby World Cup. This wasn't all, as another young winger named
Besides me, though.
Colby would step up to the plate and cement South Africa's success as Rugby World Cup champions. Farrell lying on the ground and praying.
Boy.
The Cup victory ignited hope into the lives of every South African back home, as it was the first time in 12 years that they had won a Rugby World Cup. Rassie Erasmus had led a 4th-ranked rugby team in the world to World Cup glory.
Hey, rankings don't matter. Rankings don't matter. South Africa on top.
Going into the tournament, but was filled with hope leaving the tournament. That team can only be the Springboks.
Facts.
The South African rugby team was on top of the world. They were
My bad, Jack.
World Cup champions. They were starting to gain some traction as the best rugby team in the world. You had superstars like Siya Kolisi, Cheslin Colby, Evan Etzebeth, and Peter Steph du Toit.
Yes, sir. You can't forget Peter.
Men's World Rugby Player of the Year.
Facts.
It's fair to say that as a South African living through
Much deserved.
it was like living in a movie, and you didn't think it could get any better than that. However, it would, as 4 years later, the Rugby World Cup would return. In 2020,
Yes, sir. It's just 2 years ago, chat.
again, and would take place in France. As mentioned previously, Rassie stated that he would step down as head coach of the Springboks after the 2019 Rugby World Cup, and he did so, remaining in his role as director of rugby. His replacement was the new Springbok head coach, Jacques Nienaber. These men, in conjunction with each other, would lead a hopeful South African national team to the 2023 Rugby World Cup in France. South Africa were overshadowed by Ireland in the 2023 World Cup as they were the favourites, and this was motivated as Ireland beat South Africa 13-8 in the pool stages of the tournament.
We let them win that. They get their heads up.
2019, New Zealand, the favourites, beat South Africa in the pool stage. 2023, Ireland, the favourites, beat South Africa in the pool stage. It's all starting to line up, and it wouldn't disappoint, as in the quarterfinals, South Africa would beat the second favourites, France, by 1 point.
That's all we need.
Semi-finals, they would beat another favourite, England, by 1 point.
1 point is all we need. It don't matter. A win is a win.
Rugby World Cup final.
It don't matter.
Who did they meet?
It could be 0-1. We want to.
Cup final.
We played the All Blacks in the 2023 Rugby World Cup. But was this again not full a whole bunch of kicks? The Haka going crazy. You can't hate on the Haka. You can't hate on that. You gotta respect it. What the freak?
Their arch rival, the All Blacks. A rivalry that stems decades. A rivalry where both teams had been completely and utterly dominant. And needless to say, this final was spectacular.
But it's over! It's over!
11 and 12? You're not gonna show us nothing that happened through the freaking pilot? What? Right? You hyped it up just for not showing one play that happened. Free, yeah, as long as we won, it don't matter to me.
South Africa!
We won by 1 point the whole tournament.
New Zealand by 1 point, winning a second consecutive Rugby World Cup, becoming the first team in history to win 4 Rugby World Cups,
Yep.
and only the second team in history to win 2 back-to-back.
Mhm.
This cemented South Africa as the greatest rugby nation of all time.
Facts.
It automatically made players like Dwayne Vermeulen, Evan Etzebeth, Siya Kolisi, Cheslin Colby, and Peter Steph du Toit rugby legends.
All they up there.
Many rugby fans consider these 5
And Kurt Lee. Don't you forget all the main people. Kurt Lee, Jesse Grillo, call your arm. Like, come on now. Like, don't just mention everybody, not everybody.
from Dispatch. One boy who had dreams of playing for his national team. brought South Africa to glory, brought them success, brought them hope. He brought them strong.
I can imagine they got books about him in South Africa. Probably all over the world. Probably like the grandfathers of Africa or something like that. They probably got like a crazy title, like the Legend of Rossi Erasmus or something.
Continue in that role until the 2027 World Cup has come to an end. With
2027 World Cup. I might be in this chat. I don't know what country I'm representing, but I might be in it. Y'all look up for y'all boy in the World Cup. I can't say no. I can't spoil it. I'm just saying.
Springboks will attend
That's 2 years away. October.
unprecedented
That's 2
three
years away.
rugby
Like it happened in 2 years, chat.
I think it's fair to say that as a South African, Rugby Erasmus has become a savior, a man who's brought hope to a whole nation, a man who's brought rugby players together and made them stronger together, a man who has saved South African rugby.
Y'all let me know what you think of the video, chat. While you're doing that, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe if you're new. Comment your favorite fruit. And without further ado, goodbye, YouTube.